I didn't grow up in a happy home. Sure, it was a grand estate, a sprawling property that had been in my family for generations, but it wasn't a place of warmth or love. It was a house filled with anger. My dad was always furious. My mom was bitter, and my brother Todd was just plain cruel. If it wasn't my dad hurling empty beer cans at me, it was my mom smashing my toys, or Todd beating me up for no reason. Sibling love, right? I spent most of my time hiding, crawling into closets, squeezing under beds, or tucking myself into corners where no one could find me. It was during one of these hiding sessions that I discovered something unnatural. Our house was ancient. It had been in our family since the 1700s, built by some wealthy ancestor who'd sailed over from England. The place was massive, with creaky floors, shadowy hallways, and a basement that felt like it belonged in a nightmare. It was the kind of house where you could hear whispers in the walls and feel eyes on you when no one was there. The first truly unexplainable thing happened when I was 10. Todd was about to turn 18, and in our family, that meant he'd inherit the estate. The oldest son always got the house, and Todd was already making plans for it. My parents were preparing to move into a smaller place, and as for me, well, Todd decided I'd be banished to the old servants' quarters on the edge of the property. I tried to argue, but you can imagine how that went. One night, after a particularly bad day, I hid in the basement linen closet. My lip was bleeding, and my eye was swollen shut. I just wanted to be alone. That's when I heard it. A creak. Not the usual groan of an old house, but something deliberate, like someone, or something, was sneaking around. I cracked the closet door open, just enough to peek out. What I saw froze me in place. An eye, staring back at me. It wasn't human. The iris was cloudy, the lid sagging, and the skin around it was gray and rotting. I slammed the door shut and pressed my weight against it, my heart pounding. That's when the knocking started. At first, it was on the door, but then it came from behind me, from the walls, from the ceiling. It wasn't a normal knock. It was fast, heavy, and relentless. I stayed in that closet until morning, too terrified to move. When Todd finally found me, he yanked the door open and shouted, "Get out of there, you idiot!" But as I stepped out, I noticed something strange. The door was shredded, like something had been clawing at it all night. That day, I stuck close to my family, even though being around them was its own kind of torture. But when night fell, I was alone again in my room, trying to sleep. That's when I heard it. Another creak, this time from my closet. I pulled the covers over my head, but curiosity got the better of me. I peeked out and saw him, a tall, gaunt figure with a neck bent at an unnatural angle. His feet didn't touch the ground. He was floating, and then he opened his mouth, as if trying to speak, but all that came out was a guttural, bone-chilling scream. I ducked back under the covers and didn't come out until sunrise. Over the next few days I saw more of them, a hairless creature staring at me through my third-story window, a woman with matted hair and blood dripping from her mouth in the kitchen. They were always watching me, always there. I felt like I was losing my mind. Finally, I snapped. When the bent-neck man appeared in my room again, I shouted, "What do you want from me?" To my surprise, he backed away and motioned for me to follow. Against my better judgment, I did. He led me to the basement, to a hidden hatch I'd never noticed before. With a bony finger, he unlocked it and gestured for me to go inside. The room was filled with old documents. I carefully read through them, and what I found made my blood run cold. My family had made a deal, a pact with something dark. Our wealth wasn't earned through hard work or smart investments. It came at a cost. The estate wasn't passed down to the eldest son. It went to the son who survived. The youngest child always disappeared, falling down the stairs, jumping from a window, or succumbing to a mysterious illness. Their bodies were never found. I was the youngest. I was next. As I looked up from the papers, I saw them, the ghosts of my ancestors. Their eyes were hollow, their faces gaunt. But they weren't threatening. They were pleading. The woman with blood around her mouth handed me a shovel and pointed outside. I knew what I had to do. I spent the next 2 days digging. Todd's 18th birthday was approaching, and I was running out of time. Finally, I found it. A mass grave filled with the skeletons of my family. One by one, I returned their skulls to them. As I did, they began to change. Their necks straightened, their hair smoothed, their eyes softened. They were at peace. "Is it over?" I asked. The bent-neck man smiled, a sad, gentle smile. "Not yet," he said. "There's one more child who needs to be saved." I watched as they floated toward the house, where Todd and my parents were making plans for the future. I don't know what happened to them that night. I never saw them again. But I wasn't sad. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Now I live in the estate alone. The house hasn't changed much, but I have. I'm no longer afraid of the things that go bump in the night. I know it's just my great aunts and uncles saying hello,